Welcome back to Transcriber from Reddit. Today's topic comes from the subreddit exLutheran, posted by user relevant-shop8513. The title of the post reads, Matt Harrison admits to using synod resources for his reelection. The post includes a screenshot from the user's website. And it reads, Synod President publicly admits wrongdoing. On late Friday afternoon, February 8th, 2019, Matthew C. Harrison publicly admitted interfering in Synod's presidential nomination process. There's a link that says, to read President Harrison's public admission on the LCMS website, click here. Linked. Note, to read it online, you have to click the words, a note from President Harrison, plus. Otherwise, it is hidden. Editor's note, President Harrison's public admission has been removed from the lcms.org website. What did Harrison do wrong? President Harrison tainted Synod's nomination process by giving wrong advice to pastors about who could nominate him, and he did so at Synod expense. The text underneath the photo reads, what we ex-LCMS persons always knew about the Synod. From the time of JAO, Prius, and on down, everything is rigged. Seminaries, national elections, placements, blackballing personnel, closing of parishes, and confiscating church properties, and excommunication are all engineered from corporate headquarters in St. Louis. Those who support St. Louis are rewarded and advanced. Those who question the authority of the status quo are suppressed. Which brings me to this website, a link that I've seen shared on Lutheran forums. Written by Twinstone Warden on May 14th, 2026, titled Synodical Campaigning Backfire. He writes, Today I received an email forwarded to me by our congregation's treasurer. He had received it at the congregation's email address, and he sent it to me because I am a voting lay delegate to the upcoming LCMS convention and an elector for synodical president. The headline was alarmism about, quote, dirty politics, hidden agendas, corrupted power, character assassinations, ... end quote. Blah, blah, blah. So let's talk about it. Since this group of one sent this out making so many accusations, let's talk about dirty politics. It strikes me that the dirty politics are not what the email identified. Instead, the emails claim that 2 of 5 candidates for synodical president have dropped out is dirty politics. Speaking out of turn for them, apparently to benefit by hidden agenda, one of the challenger candidates. The whole email and Substack by Truth and Light Media gave me anything but truth and light. It gave me spin, innuendo, and muckraking. To be transparent, since I am a man with a synod but without a tribe, I was considering voting for either Harrison or Ball. But with this kind of politicking underway, I now am clear that I cannot risk the luxury of choosing between them and must stick with Harrison because A, his confessionalism is good and comparable to Ball's. B, his incumbency gives him a better chance to elect my choice between these two. C, there are some management tasks that I believe Harrison has done well on, such as elimination of debt. And D, given that to an extent, personnel is policy, many of his personal actions have been for the betterment of policy. Side note, notice he did not give any examples of what specifically he likes about Harrison. And this is important because we're going to get to the Truth and Light website article about this through their Substack. Continuing on. 3 years is a long time in one respect, parentheses, though a drop in a bucket in another, end parentheses. And things could change significantly in that time. But it looks like Ball will be there in 3 years, still relatively young and ready to succeed to the office. Through this, we get 3 years to prepare for our transition. Maybe I would have voted for Ball this time, but what I assess as bad acting in an opposing campaign has backfired on them with me. And hey, I've disagreed with Harrison publicly in the past on a couple of significant things. As I said, I am a man with a synod but without a tribe. I take things one issue at a time on each issue's merits, not according to groups, parties, tribes, or personalities. And so I disagree with my friends sometimes. Real friends who are not mere politicians can accept this. Harrison has. I have to give him credit where credit is due, and much credit is due him on this element. The fact that I critiqued a couple things he did some years back has not interfered with his cordiality and cooperation with me on things since then. And while anyone should admit that he and his supporters are campaigning, which in one respect I don't like, can the other side admit that it is campaigning and in a manner that is, shall we say, kind of out there and disappointing? Side note. Yes, that was the point of the Truth and Light article, is that Harrison has been campaigning and has been campaigning in a manner that is not befitting him of his office. Continuing on. This is my entirely unsolicited and admittedly idiosyncratic opinion, which I offer to other delegates, electors, and people in my synod for you to consider on the merits. Each of us should 1. Take counsel, and 2. Think independently. Here ends their article. Now, because the author of the blog post did not link directly to the Substack article in question, I'm led to believe that based off of this May 12th, 2026 article written by Karsten Christensen from Truth and Light Media is the Substack post he is specifically referring to, where it's titled Dirty Politics, Hidden Agendas, Corrupted Power, Character Assassinations, Digital Stalking Must End in LCMS. President Harrison should quash all anti-woman overtures. Voter and delegate registration opens. Scrolling down through the Substack article, I believe these 2 trending stories linked here at the top. 1, 2 nominees for LCMS Synodical President, and the second one, current LCMS Synodical President, Reverend Matthew Harrison, admitted to inappropriate use of Synod's resources, postcards, nonprofit postage, email lists and labels, his on-the-clock time, and that of other employees at the LCMS International Center are related. And specifically, we'll go into what the previous author, who is defending President Reverend Matthew Harrison and Harrison's actions. The first article talks about how 3 nominees, Reverend Dr. Joel Bierman, Reverend Brady Finnern, and Reverend Matthew Harrison, have allowed their names to remain standing for election, while 2 nominees, Reverend Benjamin Ball and Reverend Peter Lang, have effectively withdrawn. And Truth and Light Media notes that it'll be publishing multiple articles in reference to this upcoming synodical president election. And that's where the article talking about President Reverend Matthew Harrison's inappropriate use of Synod's resources in order to get himself reelected comes into play. The blurb here in the Substack reads, he admitted to these violations of trust and ethics and potentially ghost employment in a letter that was once posted but hidden on the LCMS website. That hidden letter has since been purged entirely and is no longer available on the website. It is clear that others at the International Center continue to assist in obfuscating President Harrison's violations of trust and fiduciary duty to the people in the pews of the LCMS. It is time to hold them to account. From the Truth and Light Media website, we see LCMS President Reverend Matthew Harrison admitted to interfering in Synod's 2019 presidential nominations process to help his own candidacy. Admission letter purged from LCMS website. Below that, we see a 7-page document listed. Already, that's 1 citation more than the LCMS post that we already read. Excuse me, LCMS affiliated blog post that we already read. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. As I said, it is 7 pages. I'm going to highlight a couple things here, however. First off, Harrison's postcards. President Harrison sent handwritten postcards on January 3rd and 4th from the President's office at Synod expense to the pastors of select congregations. 3 pastors shared their postcards with Congregations Matter. They believe there's something wrong with it. Congregations Matter agrees. And you can download and view each of the postcards yourself. They go on to say why Harrison felt the need to do this is unclear. How he chose the pastors is unclear, but 2 things are certain. 1, President Harrison encouraged select pastors, not all, to circumvent a congregation's role in the nomination process. He punctuated it with his imperative, either, quote, important, end quote, or, quote, important, bro, end quote. And 2, when President Harrison used his office to send postcards at Senate expense to fish for nominations from select friendly pastors in this way, in bold, he interfered in the nomination process for synod president and put synod's election process at risk, end bold. Then they go through that it's the congregation's right to nominate. How will we know if Harrison's nominations are valid? What's wrong with Harrison contacting friends? And they have linked to the synod's own, quote, sample constitution, end quote, for smaller congregations, as well as the synod's own, quote, guidelines, end quote, for constitutions and bylaws of congregations. How did Harrison know which pastors to contact? Will Harrison's nominations be valid? And then, the piece that's been referenced, Synod President publicly admits wrongdoing. He had apparently made a public admission on the LCMS website that was linked. And initially you could find it if you click the words, a note from President Harrison plus to expand the list. But then, President Harrison's public admission was removed from the lcms.org website. If anyone has a link, archived, whatever, screenshot, whatever, please link that in the description below and also send it to truthandlightmedia.org. This is more evidence that at the very least, President Harrison is willing to bend rules in his own favor. And at the very worst, the LCMS process to elect a synod president needs to be investigated to keep other people, like President Matthew Harrison, from taking advantage of it and skirting around their rules. All the links will be included in the description below. Please take a look and read them for yourself. Thank you for watching/listening, and I will see you in the next one.